Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. In this video, I want to look at the chart of famous podcaster Joe Rogan. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button, please. Helps me out a lot. And subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you. Okay. Let me actually go to his Wikipedia first, just to summarize his life, because he's involved in a few different things. Some people are really easy; they just kind of do one thing and that's it. Joe Rogan was quite a complex character, I guess. So he was a UFC color commentator, podcaster, comedian, actor, and former television presenter. He obviously hosts the Joe Rogan Experience. That's where most people know him from. He began his career in comedy, and then so he's signed a developmental deal with Disney. I don't know what developmental deal means, but whatever. He appeared as an actor on several television shows, including Hardball, News Radio. Started working for the UFC as an interviewer and color commentator. He released his first comedy special, I'm Gonna Be Dead Someday. He hosted Fear Factor for several years. He did more comedy. He's kind of all over the place, involved in entertainment and fighting and media and commentator, all that. And then the Joe Rogan, obviously his podcast blew up. He's probably the biggest podcaster in the world. And he started out, so this is important to understand too, that he trained in martial arts, right? He didn't just become a UFC commentator. He trained in martial arts, and he was actually good. Karate, Taekwondo. He won the U.S. Championship Taekwondo tournament as a lightweight. Became a Taekwondo instructor. State champion 4 consecutive years. Kickboxing. And then he stopped because he had headaches. Dropped out of school, started stand-up, blah, blah, blah. The rest is history. We know the rest. Well, we know a lot of it. He was involved in various scandals around his politics and, because he goes against the establishment sometimes, which they don't like, and if you say anything that goes against the status quo, they're like, they really get upset. They badmouth you. They try and make up all sorts of stuff. He's an advocate of drugs and spirituality. He's political minded, and we know what happened with the COVID-19. I don't want to raise any sort of issues here that'll give me another strike, which means my channel will be deleted. But there's been various issues with him. In any case, let's go back to astrology. All right. So he's got his sun in Leo. Sun in Leo is very strong. It's in the 4th house. It's conjunct Jupiter. And actually, Sun conjunct Jupiter, we just saw that with what's his name? My God, Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger. But Mick Jagger had other planets as well. But Sun conjunct Jupiter. Yay. Kanye West, right? Alex Jones. A lot of other people, right? It creates a very big personality because Jupiter expands, and really, it's the great benefic. It makes things really flourish, generous, big-hearted, big, very well-meaning. And because Sun rules Leo, this helps the Jupiter. It's not going to be like I said with Mick Jagger. It's not as exaggerated as it is in in a sign where it doesn't do as well, like Gemini, because then you have the Gemini exaggeration, and then because Jupiter is opposite Sagittarius, then it brings out it really expands the ego in not such a great way in Gemini. But in Leo, the sun's in Leo, it's natural, it's more subdued. You might think it's like more, it would be more overblown, more egotistical, but actually not. Like it just, because it's like there's a lot more confidence, so it doesn't need to like constantly blow itself up the way it does in Gemini, where it's just like constantly overstating. Gemini, the expression is like, so it's so overstated. Gemini is exaggerated anyway, because Gemini has a need to express itself, and the way it does that is by overstating things. So Gemini is always overstated, and with Sun conjunct Gemini in Sun conjunct Jupiter in Gemini, it's bloated, it's overblown, right? It's more calm, it's more healthy. It acts more healthy in Leo, because when Sun in Leo is very confident, it's very natural, it's very healthy, it's very dignified, right? Sun belongs in Leo. Sun doesn't belong, but it rules Leo. It does very well in Leo, right? And Jupiter benefits off that. So this is not as oddly enough, and the reason why I compare it to Sun conjunct Jupiter in Gemini is because it's not as egotistical on the surface as Sun conjunct Jupiter in Gemini, even though Leo is the sign of the ego, right? It's a bit more natural, but it does very well here, and it makes a very big personality, big ego, philosophical, generous. Of course, Jupiter the sun does tend to burn Jupiter. It burns whatever planet it comes in contact with. That's why it's called combustion when a planet's so close. So there will be times of depression, of losing faith, of, feeling, just, he's not religious, that for one thing. I mean, so sun can damage Jupiter, and I think it does. So there's a struggle between the Jupiterian optimism, and there obviously like negative things can happen. Like there will be periods of, especially burnout, when sun is combust a planet. There's burnout, periods of burnout, right? I have Sun conjunct Venus, so generally Sun conjunct Venus makes a very nice personality, very friendly, healthy relationship with beauty and femininity and things like that. But when the burnout comes, it can become quite nasty, right? Even Sun conjunct Venus. So Sun conjunct Jupiter can create that despondency, that lack of faith, the depression, negative Jupiter. But then it comes back, right? So it's sort of like this up and down when planets are combusted. When it's flourishing, you get all the positive qualities and infused into the sun of that planet, and then when there's the burnout, you get the real negative opposite side of that, which we probably don't see as much online. But I'm sure Joe Rogan goes through periods of depression, and maybe not that often, but often enough, and lack of faith, and lack of connection to God, spirituality. He was born religious, but he was born into a religious family, or at least a religion, Catholic, I can't remember, some Christianity, Christian, whatever branch of Christianity, and he does not consider himself religious, which is not surprising with Capricorn in the 9th house and Saturn not dignified in Aries. We'll get to that more. But then Sun conjunct Jupiter. He's very philosophical and spiritual, right? And he's always talking about, his spiritual experiences and things like that. Excuse me. Now he's got his moon in Libra in the 6th house, and moon's ruling the 3rd house. So 3rd house is communications, intellect, and this is where we look to for media, generally speaking. 3rd house. So 3rd lord in the 6th in competition. So sports commentator, not sport, fighting commentator, right? UFC commentator. That's very much very telling about this position. Moon in Libra also, like, he tries to be very balanced and fair. You can see that, and sometimes he's a little too soft, I think, my personal opinion. Maybe he thinks differently, but he definitely has an edge when he needs to, and he's a fighter and a commentator, and he tries to he tends to be a little more slightly on the libertarian leaning side of things, although he goes back and forth, and that's very Libran, right? Like he's endorsed Bernie Sanders, who's a total communist. Bernie is an out and out communist who would ruin this country, and thank God he's not, Bernie should just, go to bed forever, right? All right. But he does have that Libran, Libra always likes to see both sides of things, very fair, very balanced. So, sixth house fighting, obvious, and he also has these other planets here, but I'm jumping around a bit. Excuse me. That's my Gemini nature to move pretty quickly. Fourth house also deals with, obviously, early childhood, but home life and what makes us happy, right? Because home is where the heart is. So anytime planets are in the fourth house, that's naturally something that makes us happy. And so if the fourth lord is in the fourth house, that shows he's very happy at home. And he's very happy. He says he has a good childhood, even though his father left young, which is interesting. I would not have gotten that from this because sun typically represents father, but perhaps Saturn conjunct, by 6 degrees, the 12th house cusp has something to do with it. Saturn, not in good dignity. Saturn can represent father, especially if we take it as the 9th and 10th house ruler. That can indicate father. Saturn is not limited to father. It can include grandparents or any authority type figures, older people in general, and authority figures, government type stuff, law, teachers, anyone in a senior position, especially when we're young. Right. So yeah, fourth house is also politics. So he could be, a political figure, even if he's not a politician per se. He's going to have political influence with his sun and Jupiter in the fourth house. He's going to represent the homeland, and people will feel that he represents the homeland. People will feel represented by him because fourth house is the homeland, home turf, right? Buying land. Also, you can see like farmers in the fourth house as well. People with very luxurious homes. He has a big multi-million-dollar home in Austin, Texas. Huge home. And Jupiter obviously is excellent for that, as well as Sun in Leo in the fourth house. Mercury doesn't hurt either. But also being in brick and mortar, right? So there's something about brick and mortar that will really work well for him. Like if he has an actual physical center where he does his podcast, that will be very important for him, for his success and for his growth, to have that fourth house physicality, right? And he could buy some land. He could start the Joe Rogan community, something like that, right? That would work well as representing the homeland, which is, in this case, the biggest sense America. Somehow he could be a representative of the people with the fourth house sun and Jupiter and Mercury, right? Expression, Mercury is, hold on. Jupiter is ruling the 8th house cusp and the 11th house. So also to do with his topics matter, the things that he likes to talk about, out of the box things, drugs, spirituality, things of that nature. So definitely 8th house topics and 11th house topics, politics, social issues, conspiratorial type stuff. Like he's not an Alex Jones, but he does have Alex Jones on the show. And he bridges the gap. And I think that's why a lot of people like him. He can go mainstream. He has had Mark Zuckerberg on and been very, very gentle with him, almost coddling him, I thought, because he could have really been hard on, but I don't think he wants to do that. He wants to be like for everyone, including like the, Illuminati, tech overlords who think we're all, stupid slaves and, they just need to shut us up and we'll do, we'll tell you what the truth is, and you don't think for yourself, you just follow us. But then he goes, so he goes that, and that's the Libra moon. He goes there, and then he goes all the way to the other side, taking ivermectin and staying, interviewing Alex Jones and the like, and Robert Malone, and other people, right? So that's the 8th, 11th house influence here, and also career success as well. 11th house, a Jupiter, and so that's quite good. Jupiter is helped by the Leo sun. Yeah. And then the 8th house, Jupiter ruling the 8th house, I think that protects him from, not only is it Jupiter, but again, the sun. So the sun in Leo, right? So it's benefiting from the strength of this very dignified sun in Leo, right? And naturally, there's just tons of confidence in a lot of areas because of Leo, sun, and then Mercury. Mercury's ruling the 5th house, obviously 5th house for entertainment, right? And he's an entertainer. I mean, that's primarily what he does. He entertains people. And 2nd house, speaking, voice, speaking, right? And then Mercury also just in general communication, right? In intellect. So, and then Mercury is semi-square. I haven't even, okay, I'm going out of order. I'll get to that later. Ascendant in Taurus, ruled by Venus. Venus is not in good dignity here. And I think that's why he could not continue to fight, because Venus is literally representing his body, being the ascendant lord, and it's not in good dignity. It's retrograde in Virgo. Some people would say that the retrograde negates the poor dignity, the in detriment, or actually debilitated. I don't know. I don't think so. If the ascendant lord is not in good dignity, that affects the body, right? So I think that's partly, and plus it's conjunct Pluto, right? So even though he's got this Mars and Scorpio, which I haven't even talked about yet, in the 6th house, which is why he likes to fight and he likes fighting, right? His body is not strong enough with the conjunction of Pluto and Uranus and in Virgo, right? But 5th house for entertainment, for all kinds of entertainment, for being on stage, for confidence, for being in the limelight, for having fun, all that, right? General education. And he was a stand-up comedian, and like, so if you listen to his stand-up, he's not actually that funny. Like, I'm not trying to diss him or anything, but that's why it's not like the bulk of his career. Like, he's good on stage, he's excellent on stage, super confident, great presenter. He belongs on stage, he belongs in front of the camera, he should be speaking publicly. He's just not that funny. But what he is he's kind of shocking. He curses a lot, and he has very bold, outspoken views, and he says things that are like really just kind of like destructive. Like, he curses a lot, and that's Venus conjunct Pluto and Uranus in Virgo. Virgo is very perceptive, very sharp. So he makes these observations, and they're bold, they're evocative, they're provocative. And Uranus often is funny, so there's humor there, but it's not super strong. I mean, this is the so 67, right? So the 60s, Uranus and Pluto in Virgo. That's always going to be a strong element in somebody's chart, and that's his Venus is pretty closely conjunct this pair, this conjunction, this very dynamic 60s conjunction. So I think that's where the comedy is coming from, the bulk of it, right? But also Leo. I mean, Leo's not necessarily funny, but it's just so bright and warm, and it brings warmth and jovialness, right? Leos can be very jovial and happy, and they lighten people up. So yeah, Leo is great for comedy if it's supported in other ways. It's great for creativity. Sixth house or fifth house is great for creativity as well. So, we're getting that. And then Mercury is semi-square Pluto. So that's adding to this destructive kind of storytelling, jokey kind of way that he goes about things. Pluto is the deep, it's raw, it's deep, it's powerful, it's strong, and that's kind of like shock. Like when you listen to him, there's humor there, but it's a bit more like, whoa, like wow, it's powerful, it's strong, it's evocative, provocative, like he's a good performer. He didn't make me laugh. Yeah, what else? Venus is ruling the sixth house. So there again, the sports, I mean, fifth house is sports, fifth house is fun and games, but the sixth house is, more like competition, like one-on-one, especially competition, so UFC, right? And then Pluto and Mercury, that definitely helps with that as well. Sorry, Pluto and Uranus, my bad. Pluto and Uranus for the violence, the fighting. Of course, they can go there because Uranus is just very shocking. Pluto's just destructive, right? Potentially, and transformative, right? And this Pluto conjunct Venus will help transform the Venus, change his body, but like not in such a healthy way. So, yeah. All right. It is sextile Mars by 2 degrees, and that's good. And so Mars is in Scorpio, obviously, and so like he definitely, I mean, he is a good fighter, right? Mars is an excellent dignity, and Mars is ruling the 7th house, and that's why I think his podcast went so well, because the 7th house is so strong, right? Mars is in Scorpio and it's ruling the 7th house. And so it's not just him standing on stage, which he is a good performer, but he's involving other people. 7th house, relationship, right? So he brings somebody else on, and that fulfills this exalted Mars, this 7th house relationship. Sorry, not exalted, Mars and domicile in Scorpio. My bad. This very strong, and then very strong 12th house as well, because he's bringing in that. So he's bringing in a lot of like exotic foreign ideas and views, and people outside the box, creativity, all sorts of 12th house elements, I guess you could say. He talks about spirituality and drugs and I don't know, all kind of aliens, right? And so that definitely helps with that. Saturn is, the other thing about comedy is that his MC is in Aquarius. Aquarius always look to the air side, especially Aquarius is secondary Gemini. Gemini's ruling his 2nd house. Aquarius is ruling his MC. So that's part of it. And then Uranus as well, conjuncting Pluto and Venus. But Saturn being the co-ruler of Aquarius and the ruler of the 9th, that is in conjunct Mars, but at least it's still connected to it. So that's, and Mars and then Saturn is in Aries. Saturn's not in good dignity here, but the aspect from Mars is helping it out because Mars rules Aries. So that is a bonifying quality. But the Saturn's not great, and it's retrograde. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely it's going against the grain, that's for sure. And that's 9th house. But it shouldn't be so good for a career. But I think because such strong 7th house, that helps out a lot, and that's helping out his career. So obviously he could not have he would not be so successful without really good partnerships. His ability to bring in really top tier people, and that's here, this Mars exalted. So the other people are really helping out his career a lot, helping out his whole image and show and all that. Right. Neptune is also in the 7th. And Neptune, I think this helps actually bring him a lot of glamorous people on his show, famous people, because Neptune is that glamour, that fantasy, the alter ego, I like to say, because it's the fantasy of the self. So when people reach celebrity status, it's really in Neptunian range, because they're not really who they are. They're not really who we see as the famous person is not who they really are. And that's the whole nature of Neptune, of Pisces, of 12th house. It's that the image is different from the underlying reality. And so you're getting a lot of Neptunian influence here from these famous people who are putting on an act, they're putting on a show, they're putting out a persona, right? So there's that element, as well as his spiritual tone to things, that he always likes to talk about spirituality and drugs and really out there Neptunian kind of things. Definitely going, like, even his the Joe Rogan Experience is like, he's got like the third eye picture there. That's very Neptunian. And so it's pretty close to the descendant. Anything on the descendant is always going to also reflect back on the ascendant, because there's always a 7th house aspect, right? That's pretty strong with all planets. So you always have to consider that, even when planets are on the IC, they're still affecting the MC. So they're still affecting the career when it's down here on the IC, right? So, and any planets on the descendant are also affecting the ascendant. So that's something you also have to consider. It's not as strong. It's primarily other, but secondary influence is ascendant, right? Same down here. The opposite influence would be 10th house and MC. Okay. Chiron's not doing much here. It's not really making it, so that's good, right? Because if Chiron makes bad aspects, it can really hurt someone. It represents rejection, wounds, being an outsider, outcast, things of that nature, some deep wounds and hurts and rejection that needs to be healed. Healer, potentially, once those wounds are resolved, or positive aspects. But this is not doing very much anything. He's got a south node conjunct moon, and that could also be a reason for his headaches. It's in the 6th house. It's out of sign, but it's still quite close. It's 5 degrees. So that is a quite strong conjunction. And south node conjunct moon can be very destabilizing, especially when young, when the south node's really activated. It shows, it shows a real mental, difficult time mentally, mental illness even for some people. But as they get older, then the mind becomes very, very sharp, intuitive, perceptive, even psychic sometimes. So I think Joe Rogan has, he has spiritual experiences, because when South Node conjunct Moon, there really is, Moon represents the past, represents the intuition, the mind. There's a lot of karmic significance with the Moon. People with South Node conjunct Moon can be very, very psychic. These are actually the most psychic if it's in a good sign, supportive sign and house. 6th house, more intuitive, right? And being out of sign, it's not as strong. But like if this were in the 8th or 12th house in a water sign, very, very psychic, right? So there's that. So I think he has pretty powerful intuition and very sharp perception when South Node conjunct the Moon. Even if they don't consider themselves spiritual or psychic, their ability to think is heightened by this, because South Node shows things that we brought in from the past. Moon is the mind. Moon is the inner mind, the slightly more hidden quality of the mind. And it's related to Mercury as well. Mercury and the moon both rule the inner mind, like, whether you have mental illness or not, or how healthy your mind is, or intuition, psychic connections, that sort of thing, right? With Mercury semi-square Pluto, that's not so good for his mental health, right? And so I would say that he does have to be careful of drugs and alcohol. If he goes too far down that end, he could become very destructive and mentally off balance. But Mercury here is helped by the sun in Leo, because the sun is so strong, and then Jupiter as well. So generally speaking, but then if he gets depressed, gets down, and so things could get ugly for him. But and then also for his mind, when he said he had headaches, I think Pluto semi-square Mercury probably as well. That does relate. And South Node Moon, right? So yeah, and then he's got his North Node at 0 degrees Taurus. 0 degrees is interesting for the nodes. It's probably more intense and powerful, right? And then I left Sedna in here. I mean, you can look up the mythology of Sedna. I don't even remember, but it was, it's not, I just left it in here just out of curiosity. Like, I don't know, maybe you'll be able to draw some conclusions. I don't know what it means. I mean, other than we can look up it has a spiritual significance. I mean, I've read I'm not ignorant of it. I read it, but people don't use it enough for us to draw a collective solid meaning. It's very vague. So I just left it because it was exactly conjunct the North Node. So he's headed towards Sedna, whatever that means. Something a little more spiritual, a little more out of the box, unusual. And 12th house. 12th house is, well, 12th house is a lot of things. I mean, isolation, exotic places, foreign places, creativity, the subconscious. So I think here, it being in Taurus, Venus down here in Virgo. Virgo is obviously ruled by Virgo's an earth sign, so it's a little bit more material. Taurus is as well. So there's something more creative about this North Node. Venus is in the fifth house, so entertainment, camera, film camera, photography, all that, television. So I think him being, doing the podcast, that's the 12th house thing. That's very helpful and appropriate for this kind of North Node. But as well as spirituality, mystical type stuff, meditation, exploration into all the woo-woo type things. That's all here as well. Right. He doesn't have that many difficult aspects, I guess you could say. The Saturn in conjunct Mars is difficult, and that's a tricky one. Saturn and Mars. So Saturn in Aries is not good. It's debilitated because it's opposite. It's exaltation in Libra. It's kind of tyrannical. It's quite a selfish Saturn, because Aries is all about the self and action and inspiration, and Saturn just does better with moderation and balance and thinking about the people. It needs to be more spread out. That's why it likes Venus and Libra. But it is helped by the connection, even though it's not a healthy, that's the wrong word, positive aspect. It's still, and this shows that he's going to be involved, fighting and conflict and things of that nature with others. And Mars is still in the 6th house, so it's pulling in 6 and 7. So competition with others, authority, because he does run into authority, and he has issues there. So let's look at his draconic chart. So here we're seeing a lot of third house activity, Mercury, Jupiter, exalted Jupiter, and then Sun. So for media, that's very important. And then fourth house again, right over his Jupiter and Sun. We got Venus, Pluto, Uranus. So again, that's, you know, emphasizing all the creativity, Leo stuff, being on stage, performance, and happiness at home, just all kinds of things at home, not only happiness, but well, Venus, yeah, but also destructiveness and shocks and, you know, Uranian type out of the box kind of things. Makes him a bit more, you know, this is going to add to his brilliance, to sort of out of the box thinking. I'm not saying brilliance in a sense that he's like an intellectual genius, but he does have a certain kind of brilliance because he's, you know, he does quite well for himself. I mean, he's a self-made millionaire and he's worldwide famous. So this is just adding to his dynamic personality, you could say. And then here again, Moon in Virgo conjunct Uranus, and similar thing, right? Just adding to that Uranian quality. Uranus would also be a factor for comedy and thinking outside the box, being independent minded, right? Kind of shocking, you know, like the whole like ivermectin thing, right? Going against the status quo, all that. And then here Neptune's conjunct the moon by 5 degrees, adding, you know, more creativity as well. Mars is in Libra here in the 5th house, not so good for fighting and competition. It's probably why he, you know, couldn't go further with that, as well as the other things I said. Venus and Virgo conjunct Pluto, right? Chiron and Aquarius, and that seems kind of funny because Aquarius is usually, not usually, but often associated with comedy, and then Chiron's kind of weird, quirky, oddball, 10th house, right? So that's appropriate. Yeah. Let's see. North Node conjunct Chiron. I don't know. Not getting much from this, but you know. All right, that's pretty much it for the draconic. Trying to think if there's anything else to talk about. Moon, you can see here by this inconjunct, Moon is exactly to the degree in conjunct the ascendant. So that shows it's squarely in the 6th house, because that's the nature of the 6th and 8th, is the inconjunct, right? That's how you know it's fully in the 8th house or not, or 6th house rather, 6th or 8th. You know, its relationship to the ascendant. That's where we get these. That's why the 6th house is a difficult house, and the 8th house is a difficult house. This aspect right here. So the moon is quite conflictual, right? It's in the 6th house. It's enemy, fighting, competition, service to others, small animals, pets. What else? Mundane, daily grind, hardworking, all that. Yeah. As well as the South Node. And then Mars is, I already went through Mars, right? Okay. And then Mars also ruling the 12th house. That's going to really help with his creativity, his ability to be, you know, you got to be creative to do stand up. You got to be creative to interview people, because you have to think up questions and you have to do it on the spot a lot of times. You know, you can do it ahead of time, but you have to be able to, you have to respond to the people in real time. Right. There's a square, a light square between Sun and Neptune. So, you know, you can easily be fooled, and you should watch out for drugs and alcohol, things of that nature. Mercury, there's a light square between Mercury and the nodes. It's 4 degrees off. and it's separating because the nodes are moving down. They would just be moving into Aries while, Mercury would be moving up. Yeah, Mercury is what he does, so that's interesting. Anytime there's a planet connected with the node, south node, north node, or square, then it's going to have something to do with the destiny of the person. So Mercury is what he does. He's a talker, a communicator, media personality. So, all right, I think that's pretty much the bulk of what I want to share about Joe Rogan. I'm just looking at this Saturn in conjunct Venus, and yeah, that's issues with authority again, right? Because this is this kind of tyrannical authority, because Saturn's in it's not like Saturn in Libra where it's fair, the law, the righteous law. This is like kind of tyrannical, being against, because Venus is his ascendant lord. He's very picky with Venus and Virgo, but it's also, in difficult aspect to Saturn. And there's actually a yod here between Venus, Mars, and Saturn. So something about tyranny, being opposed to tyranny, and foreign tyranny, perhaps, being the 12th house, tyranny in show business, tyrannical authority. Yeah, he probably has some enemies. Again, yeah. And what else can I say? I don't know. Probably the changing in career has to do with Venus conjunct Pluto. But I'm getting into minutia here, so I think that's enough. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Hit the like button if you did. Even if you kind of enjoyed it, hit the like button, please. I would appreciate it. And I just spit. Sorry. Subscribe if you haven't already. And leave a comment. And book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com. My email address is macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. And you can email me directly to book a reading, or for whatever. All right, guys. That's it. I'll see you soon. Bye.